So welcome everybody to our session. Before we are starting, I would like just to point you to a few hints on the meeting etiquette. If you have any technical problems, please turn to Michaela, Miani or Matt and write a personal chat to them. And again, I would like to point out to you that the session is recorded and that you can rename yourself in Zoom if you want, as Jacqueline already pointed out. Please mute yourself, or we are muting yourself, or we are muting you if we hear any too many background noises or echoes. I would like to encourage you to please, if you have any questions concerning the presentations, please put it also in the chat. We will have hopefully a short discussion session at the end of our session, which is quite short. So, and I think it is time to start the session. Welcome everybody to this session on food trends. Let me just change my screen. On food trends, scenarios and policies, research and innovation for sustainable EU food systems. I would like to briefly introduce ourselves and the speakers of this session. My name is Beatrix Wepner. I'm from the Austrian Institute of Technology, and I will give you a short insight on analytical tools that serve as instruments for supporting the processes of vision development, systems understanding, road mapping, and action planning. And we have Chiara Pontillo from the University of Bologna here, and she will give an insight on EU food policy mapping and how to include this tool in the context of the instruments that we've used in the FIT4Food 2030 project, namely the city and food labs and the policy labs. And then there is Thom Achterbosch from Wageningen Economic Research, and he will give you an introduction on foresight and RRI approaches for outcome-oriented food system strategies. So, but I would like to start with my favorite topic, really, the analysis of trends in the food system. EIT was project leader for this part of the project, and I'm very happy to give you a short introduction to this topic. So we already heard that the food system as it is now urgently needs change, and the current way of processing and producing and transporting and consuming is not sustainable. So we are facing various challenges, and the Food 2030 agenda has summarized them under the 4 big headlines that John Bell was already talking about, namely nutrition, climate smart, and environmentally friendly sustainable food systems, circularity, and food systems innovation and empowering of communities. So we are aware that the system needs change, and that also research and innovation processes must change and must become diverse, anticipative, transparent, and open, responsive, and adaptive to change. And that we need instruments and tools to change the system, not only science being held up, but really actions that are taking place. So we all want the food system to change to a resilient food system that is inclusive, connected, participative, responsible, and diverse. But we also have the present situation and the circumstances. And at least for me, I know how difficult it is to change my system and to, for example, to put some workout routine into my everyday regime. We know a whole food system is very difficult to change and to influence. So within the present system, we have various projects, work going on. We have new companies, startups that already depict such a food system, and that were identified in our project as showcases. And we also have breakthroughs that have a big impact on the system and that can really drive it towards a resilient food system. And above all this, we have what influences the system are trends and drivers that can either have a positive or a negative effect, as you can see here with red or with green arrows. So what we did in our work, we have analyzed the trends within the food system, and we defined the trends for us as a development or change over time, which are likely to affect the society or parts of it after a few years. The thing is that the trend cannot be easily influenced in a mechanic way by specific or individual organizations, players or nations. And it is often a result of drivers, but it can be promoted in a way by strong influences. We do see a strong influence by influences on social media and in some parts. And the trend becomes visible only in retrospective. So in our analysis of the trends, we've analyzed trends influencing the whole food system. And as I said, they can change over time. So this list is in no way complete, but must be seen as a snapshot. So in the trend analysis, we've analyzed trends within the food system, but also mega trends that are influencing the whole system, mega trends, and we are all aware of them, like climate change, malnutrition, urbanization, demographic change, or digitalization that influences all parts of the food system. When we start at the beginning of the food production system, we analyzed trends regarding the agricultural production, such as game-changing digital technologies, alternatives to conventional pesticides, but also changes in farm structure. We analyzed trends that refer to the ocean and the sea, closing the loop in aquaculture. We analyzed also trends that are strongly influenced by the mega trends, like urbanization is strongly influencing urban agriculture, urban farming, indoor cultivation system are also driven by trends like urbanization or demographic change. And then running along the food chain, we also had a look at food trends in food processing, starting from ultra and high processed food to also the other end of the scale, that would be natural preservatives, so minimal processing methods, highly technical trends like the blockchain technology or cultured or in vitro meat. Then also we had a look at trends that are strongly related to the consumer, where the consumer has a strong influence on the food system or and strong impact on how foods are developed. Like special diets, vegetarian, vegan, or low carb. We have globalization of diets, we have changing households in food, but also trends like health and food consciousness or smart and personalized food. Then we also had a look at trends within market economy, retail and logistics, like concentration in food retail markets, chain clustering along the food supply chain, or short food supply chains are some trends that can be named here. Further, we had a look at packaging and waste. There are highly sophisticated and highly technical trends like packaging 4.0, where you get a lot of digital technology integrated in the packaging, or trends like bio-based packaging, but also a trend to reduce packaging. And there's the trend to reuse waste of upcycling food waste or waste cooking. And we have analyzed some other trends that are not really related to the food system that refer to policy, or for example, women's empowerment or the responsible research and innovation. So what did we do? we describe the trends briefly to give people an idea what we're talking about, what this trend means. And this is also summarized in a set of trend cards that can be easily used in a workshop setting as an input. And then what I find really exciting is also the second page of the trend descriptions, where we have summarized or given ideas of development dynamics and drivers for each of the trends, of consequences on food and nutrition security and society, and on challenges and needs for R&I strategies. So what can you do with those trend analyses, or what would follow such a trend analysis? This is one of the first instruments or analytical tools that we developed in the Fit for Food project. And of course, the trends can be used for vision development, for system understanding, road mapping, action planning, etc. And they are a very powerful instrument in participatory processes. For instance, you could start with sorting them according to their influence. Trends with a high influence are very interesting for your given situation, of specific situation or vision that you would like to develop. And trends can be supportive or can be barriers. So with those trends and with the trends descriptions and ideas on the back to identify research and innovation needs and challenges, they can be used to develop strategies and create visions, support you with road mapping processes, or to work with the community in transforming the food system. They're a very powerful instrument also to give people an idea what's happening, what's influencing the food system, and perhaps the vision that you want to develop. I would also like to point you towards our knowledge hub in the food system, where you can download the food system, the trend cards, and also the long descriptions of the trends. And you will also find some exercises on how to use the trends and to go forward. And also a bit of advertisement for tomorrow. We will have more on roadmaps, breakthroughs, and the instruments of the policy in the city labs tomorrow. But with this very quick overview, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and would like to hand over to Chiara to give you an insight on policy, on the policy mapping that we did in the project.
Yes, I'm sharing the screen right now. Maybe, or maybe not. Beatrix, if you have I'm having some issues here. Maybe with the updates, I don't know. Can you hear me, first of all?
Yes, I can, but I have disconnected. I have to.
Okay. Because in the options, I can't see the PowerPoint. Strange.
Marina,
do you want me to share the presentation?
Yes, please. If you have it, Michaela, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but maybe with the
sorry about the technical issues that always happens in the teleconferences.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you very much.
These are Beatrix ones.
No, that's mine, Michaela.
Yeah.
They're mine. Let me quickly. So in the meantime, at the end of the presentations, the 3 presentations, we will collect all the questions that you had, and Jonas Lazaro has kindly offered to go through the questions and then address them to our 3 speakers, while I'm looking for the right presentation.
Yeah, good idea. Yeah.
Maybe we can have Thom speaking first, because I don't have Chiara's presentation.
Oh, I've got it. I've got it.
Okay.
Let me just share my screen again. Oh, where is that now? Oh, there. Green button. Sorry. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Perfect. I'm really sorry. Thank you and good morning. I'm Chiara Pontillo from the University of Bologna, and I will talk about the European food policy mapping, which is an exercise carried out by the University of Bologna as a task of the Trends in the Food System work package of the FIT4Food project. And next, please. Okay. So first of all, what is the food policy mapping in practice? Well, we collected policies from related to the food systems from existing databases on specific policy goals. For example, the nourishing database or the SCAR qualitative mapping of food and nutrition security policies, but also from the websites of the member states ministries and from the European Commission websites, and also from scientific literature. And we proposed the classification for those policies according to different variables. For example, the Food 2030 priorities and challenges and the SUS-FANS policy goals adapted to the context of our search, which are the balanced and sufficient diets for all European citizens, the food safety goal, the reduced environmental impact one, the viable and social balanced European agri-food business, the equitable outcomes and conditions, and then we decided to add an additional goal during our search, which is a more cross-sectional and R&I oriented. Then we classified them according to the food system actors involved in them, both in terms of ultimate beneficiaries and in terms of primary targets of the policies, and also according to the policy instrument used to implement the policy. Next one. In the first release of this database, the mapping contains so far 460 food policies, of which 281 at the member state level and 179 at the European level. Next. And having done this task, now how can you access and actually use the database? You can first have a look at the Excel database on the Fit4Food Knowledge Hub. The link is below, and you can find there all the tools developed within the project. Then you can download it and you can explore it by playing with all the different tools and filters according to your specific research needs and policy interests. And we must say that since it was a complex exercise and most of all, since policies evolve over time, this first version of database does not really cover all existing food policies in Europe. For this reason, we created an online dynamic version of the database that will be accessible for all users, and it's called the European Food Policy Database, aka FPOD, moving forward with evidence-based food policies. And the name is inspired by the All Good iPod. And we are currently working to make it usable by all external users. And as soon as all the technical checks will be finalized, everyone will be able to actually contribute to the database and give feedbacks. For example, by suggesting correction to the mapped policies if something looks incorrect or unclear or even incomplete. And most of all, by reporting new additional policies that have not been included so far in the database. This in order to guarantee a constant and collaborative update of the tool. And at that time, we will post the link to the database in the Sustainable Food System Network platform so that you can interact with it and actually improve it. Next. And to facilitate the use of this tool and the database in different contexts, such as in a lab environment, for example, we developed a set of policy cards which are illustrative examples of the data which have been extracted from the policy database. And on the right of the slide, you can see two demonstrative cards, but you can find the full set of cards again on the Fit4Food Knowledge Hub in the link below. And these cards can be used in labs to have an overview of the food policy scenario that emerged from the database, and to organize, for example, roundtables in labs with stakeholders from different backgrounds to reflect on possible policy issues, and to encourage debate and critical thinking on possible policy gaps and policy priorities. Next one. In the next couple of slides, we can see a sort of overview of the mapped policies classified, for example, by their goals. And these kind of pie charts are an example of what you can expect to find in the policy card according to the different classification of policies that we used. So, for example, looking at the classification by Food 2030 priorities and challenges, we can notice that the 58% of the mapped policies tackle the nutrition priority, and especially the food safety and the malnutrition challenges, which are the blue and the orange slices of the pie chart. Then we can notice that 21% of them tackles the innovation and empowerment of communities priority, followed by the climate priority, which is most focused on the aquaculture and the healthy soils challenges, which are the green and the yellow slices of the pie. And then very few policies have been mapped which focus on the circularity priority, and they mostly deal with the waste prevention and the food packaging challenges. Next one. Here we can consider the classification of policies according to the SUSPAN's policy goals, and we can observe basically the same trend, which is that the majority of the mapped policies are nutrition related, so they address the balanced diets and the food safety goals. But we can see that there is a clear disproportion regarding the geographical implementation level. For example, policies addressing the balanced diets are mainly enforced at member state level, so at national level, which is the orange bar, while food safety policies are mostly enforced at European level, which is the blue bar. Then we can also see that environmental policies and those policies aimed at guaranteeing the viability and the social balance of agri-food business are quite balanced geography-wise. And then we can see that very few policies have been mapped addressing equity. Next one. So by analyzing the mapped policies, we can notice also that, for example, there could be a need to invest more in circularity policies and in bioeconomy strategy, also at national level. And as far as nutrition is concerned, since policies for balanced diets are more enforced at national level, we could reflect on whether should we act at EU level as well through a common policy for this goal. Then we notice that despite the urgency for all European citizens to have access to healthy food at decent prices, actually very few policies addresses the equity goal, which instead could benefit a lot from a responsible research and innovation approach. Then it also emerged that responsible research and innovation in the form of participatory agricultural research seems to be a little bit underexplored in designing, for example, farmer-targeted policies. And also more consumer behavior research could be commissioned with the view to designing more effective, for example, fiscal policies or even domestic food safety policies. And to conclude, we can say that we consider responsible research and innovation as a really valuable approach to foster policymaking in all areas through participation, through the engagement of civil society, and through co-creation and co-design of strategies. And because it actually enables a better understanding of the systemic challenges of food systems and their complexity. And in fact, adopting a responsible research and innovation approach in innovative policymaking could actually foster the change in the government approach towards a good level of policy integration at both content levels, so addressing multiple policy actors through a multiplicity of actors, and at geographical level by integrating local, national, regional, and international policies. So thank you for your attention, and I will give the floor to Thom, and sorry again for the inconvenience before.
Thank you. Thank you, Chiara. Just a reminder to all, please share your questions in the chat box. We will have time at the end of the session to pick up on a few of those, and yeah, it would be really nice to use that time together. I will share my screen and see if that works well. You should be looking at my presentation now. Chiara, is it?
Yes, it works.
Thanks. All right. So I'm happy to present to you on some of the work that has been done on foresight in the Fit for Food project. And foresight in itself is a very nice instrument that can be, or an approach that can be really used in combination with responsible research and innovation. I think that's resonates on messages that we've been sending throughout the last half hour. I'm contributing to this. It's not jumping to the next. Yeah. And it's important to make a combination or a connection between the innovation potential for research and innovation in transforming EU's food systems, and the way that foresight can actually do that. And also that we're actually looking for, in a way, for some guidance or a compass in making EU food systems sustainable. And having a compass in place can be integrated into a foresight project and can actually also strengthen the RRI component of such a work. So happy to share a little bit on that from my own experience. And what I will say is not only based on the work that we've been doing in Fit for Food, but it also builds on a project that has anticipated Fit for Food, which was the SysFans project, in which there was an opportunity to explore the conditions and preconditions of sustainable food systems in Europe across all the sectors of the system, and also work at international level with the CGIAR, where we try to link agriculture and nutrition in a program. And then a particular project, which was a smaller one, but also really also very nice and influential for my thinking, is starting engagement with cities and a project like Food Trails. Research and innovation. As a researcher, I think it's very important to consider your role in this change in society that is required. And I think that we are really in an interesting times where, as researchers, you can take different roles in this transformation process. Obviously, researchers have been taking distant looks at food and agriculture and how it's all related, and understanding the complexities and challenges of the food system. And then, yeah, foresight has traditionally also then contributed to designing pathways for future change. But now we're actually in a time where this looking at the system from a distance does not give you actually all the tools in your hands to really contribute as a researcher. because a lot of our solutions that we develop are fraught with a lot of uncertainty on how they will play out in society because of behavioral drivers, because of because they rock a boat without actually knowing what keeps it on course. And then keeping this perspective in place and being part of experimentational work and making your assessment actually contribute to the process is what I find a really exciting new times for researchers and new roles for researchers. And that has to do, of course, with more rigorous work again then on evaluating interventions, but also being part of discussions on how certain changes can be anchored in a more systemic change and how scaling can be a part of that. Now, these were 4 roles that were discussed in a working paper for the SCAR food systems. And I think that this is, it would be really nice if the literature and the cases that have been described in that paper, if that can build and become a broader resource for all to work on. In terms of sort of the more traditional roles of foresight, which has been to explore pathways, obviously there is a complexity to be taken on board, which can be done by looking at trends, looking at drivers, but also by giving voice to people in the system who are going to be part of that change. So this is already where the RRI, the responsible research and innovation, starts to become part of the foresight approach. And then when we when transition pathways are designed in the co-creation, that's where researchers can play a good role in pinpointing a process where key areas are identified, such as around small scale or large scale agriculture, or low tech and high tech agriculture, and then also map out the different possibilities and options that can be inspiring a pathway. And that can also then design instruments such as policies, as Chiara talked about, on delivering on these pathways. And then finally, the 2030 agenda requires us to think across goals and across targets, to look at co-benefits where we can find them, and also to be very aware of trade-offs. And all that requires dialogue and interaction. This dialogue, in my view, or if I say in our view, because that's something that was considerably part of a considerable part of the work of SysFans, is when we discuss co-benefits and trade-offs, is that we talk the same language. And that basically it's very helpful if the stakeholders and the decision makers all agree on what we expect from a food system and to what extent we want changes and improvements, and to look at priorities. And for that, we propose out of this project called SysFans, we propose a compass on where the EU food system should be moving towards in terms of sustainability. And we feel that the 4 main goals of a food system are to create balanced and sufficient diets, to reduce environmental impacts, to deliver on equity in society, and all that underpinned by a viability of the EU agri-food business. Those metrics, those 4 points can be described into metrics, and those metrics, those actually give you your sustainability compass. And I'm presenting the 16 metrics from our project here with a few numbers, and those numbers have been derived from integrated assessment modeling. So really advanced type of models that allow you to project the future forward. And in this point on this slide, it's forward towards 2030, where we are looking at the biggest gaps in terms of our sustainability performance in Europe. And then we see that climate stabilization and clean air and water are amongst the quantified metrics, the lowest scores, so the highest priorities for action. Clean air and climate have a lot of overlap with biodiversity conservation, with preservation of natural resources, typically one where we were not so confident of our quantification. So this is not policy advice, but this is just telling you on how we think that those metrics could be used. What's interesting is that climate stabilization is intertwined with a very high score on carbon efficiency in the European food system compared to global competitors or the global players. What's also interesting is that this low score of the on the climate dimension and a low score on the health dimension really spur a search for co-benefits. And then finally, on the economic dimension, we see here that the efficiency that we create in our system does not really add to our business case in the European food system. So then how does that help?
Thom, sorry, I've got 1 more minute for you.
Yes, no problem. So how does that help? Well, first of all, by looking at such data and by looking at those foresight scenarios, for us, it comes out very clearly that there is a need for a new business case in the EU agri-food system, that our current structure of going for a low cost price and for a low price bulk supply to the world markets is not a viable structure for and strategy for the future. And there is an opportunity to find new business cases based on high quality standards, based on a food safety system, possibly even based on circular or consumer-centric systems. And these need to be identified. And further, that when we look for those new systems, that we have to go beyond the current mental models on what is actually desirable and feasible. And insects as a future food, we know from all the consumer studies that there's very little acceptance, but we cannot adapt the system based on the acceptance conditions of today. We have to look into those conditions of the future. And the same applies to circularity in food, but then much more from other perspectives. And then there's the whole psychology around transformation, which makes people sometimes scared, which creates positive drivers, but also negative drivers that really can be powerful ideas for integration with a visioning process. And that then means that with all those drivers, that actually our lab is now the field. And I think what is really interesting is to start ground-proofing our academic studies and be part of these great networks as Fit4Food to talk and learn and transform together. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Thom, also for keeping the time at the end, speeding up. So, Jonas, perhaps I can ask you, did we have any questions?
Yeah, there has been 3 questions in the chat. Perhaps I will start by the last one, which is for Thom, I believe. And the question is if there might be tensions between the intention of researchers having new roles in food system transformation and how the R&I systems are currently organized. So where do we see as a Fit4Food project leverage anchor points for allowing for new roles of researchers within the current R&I policy system? So I think, Thom, that's for you. If you understood it well, you have it in the chat as well if you want to read it again.
I didn't follow, Jonas. Are you inviting me?
Yes, inviting you to respond, yeah, to reply. So the question is whether there might be tensions between the intention of researchers and how the food systems are organized, and how we can have anchor points for researchers in the current policy system.
Mm-hmm. I'm not exactly sure what the intentions are of different researchers I think we all have our own goals and ambitions, and they should also definitely be individual. So it would be nice to clarify the question a little bit more on those intentions. But I think there is room for research to first of all, identify that the way that our current structures are organized, that it creates sometimes barriers and sometimes opportunities. Also the research part, I think we are in, so I'm in an applied science institute. So in a way, that gives me very different incentives than if I would be in a university. And I think a lot of our incentives work a little bit against interdisciplinary work, transdisciplinary work. For me, that's not definitely a problem, but I think, well, what I hear from colleagues in university departments is that it's sometimes more difficult because we need a whole publishing, to jump our publishing hurdles, where the top tier journals are less conducive to publish multidisciplinary work. So I think also as researchers, we have to be reflective of the system that we've created ourselves and whether that is conducive for change.
Yeah, thank you, Thom. We have a couple more.
Perhaps I would like to add something here. I think it's very important that we have a dialogue with policymakers and researchers, starting to really to get it started. At least in Austria, it seems to be a bit more difficult, and probably that's also a good leverage point to start dialogues like that, or as was done in the Fit for Food 2030 project with the policy labs at the city and the food labs. And I think we've got good examples there that it could actually work, and it could actually lead to some sort of changes and actions.
Thank you, Beatrix. I mean, we have here another question from Hans Verhagen. And it's a long question, so I hope you might understand it, but it's to what extent should we focus more on integrated approaches? So it says calculating the consequences of different scenarios and going for the optimal best ones. This rather than sticking to the reductionist thoughts of hitherto. This is coming up more and more in nutrition research versus food safety, integrated risk benefits and cost benefits, or assessments to inform evidence-based policy decisions. It's half question, half comment. I don't know if Beatrix or Chiara, do you feel ready to answer this question?
Well, yeah, it's more reflection, I guess, which I also agree on, especially at the end, like when he's saying integrated risk benefit and cost benefit assessment are necessary to inform evidence-based policy decision, and integrated in the sense that it has to cover multiple interests and multiple areas. And since the challenges we are facing at the food systems are complex and integrated within each other, risks and benefits are difficult to be analyzed, and they have to be considered in their globality when assessing and informing policy decisions. So I tend to agree with this comment made by Hans. I don't know if Beatrix or Thom want to add something.
Yes, I have a comment to make here, in that surely as an economist, I support very much the idea of evidence-based policy decisions, and policy effectiveness, given that we have limited resources, is important. So yes, integrated approaches, weighing, looking at trade-offs between different instruments and their effectiveness, I'm all for that. What I do realize also, however, is that not all of the benefits and costs of implementing measures are readily quantified in our approaches. So we, I think, in my presentation, I had this box on the equity metrics, the performance metrics on a just and equitable food system. In my box, this is empty. In our work, we were not up to the point where we found sufficient policy information to really be able to map the equity impacts, or the sort of the baseline on equity in the food system. And I think it points also to something that Chiara said, is that also in the equity dimension, there's very little policy. There is very little integrated policy to tackle these equity issues, and they go really broad, and it's not easy. We've spent, I mean, there's been a little bit more work done in the past year, so if I would, so that there is something to do, but it really is a point that I've become sensitive to over the past years, also due to my work in cities, that there are quite a few social and equity dimensions there that are difficult.
Yeah. Sorry, we are